So I've been working on this CAN bus decoding and screen overtake project a little more the past couple of weeks, and I've got pretty much all the features that I'm looking to have implemented, except for the Wi-Fi feature, which is going to require me to cut a new board. So last time I left off, I had just gotten some of these boards cut, and I'd got my microcontroller where it was writing to the screen. So I've been doing a little more work with that. I think it's best for me just to show you. This initial view that I've got programmed, when the system comes up, it's going to have 4 digital gauges. So by default, this is what the Scosche with the PAC steering wheel adapter will do. The steering wheel adapter, of course, puts the volume up, volume down information to the screen. And then by default, I believe the Scosche is not trying to overwrite, so we see the DVD presented here. So I'll go ahead and boot up my microcontroller. And these were primarily the gauges that were available on the MCAN. I still am looking for voltage. I haven't been able to decode that just yet. The barometer is actually the barometric pressure. A lot of guys that run at the track, they want to know what the density altitude is for the specific night that they're running, just in case they need to change anything on their car setup. I also had to do some additional items around getting the mile per hour to display properly. This is really nice for me because I've got aftermarket gears and I've also got aftermarket transmission, so my mile per hour on my dash is off by about 3 or 4 miles an hour at all the time. So what I was able to do is I put in my own ratio multiplier based off the mile per hour that was coming in on the bus, and now I have a speed that I was able to verify via GPS. Comes in real handy. Also, my car, I can't just hop in it and go. It's really nice for me to have a digital temp readout versus the kind of dummy light that they put in here from the factory. The digital temp allows me to get the car warmed up to about 160, 140 degrees, somewhere in there before I take off. Just get the oil thinned out a little more so those cams aren't quite as clattery. RPM, digital readout RPM is nice. Don't know how useful it's going to be here in the center dash, but it kind of fills up the hole. One better feature of having the RPM digital readout is that I'm able to control shift lights and shift messages with it, which I'll show you a little bit later. The shift light I'm going to implement into a future revision of my board. I'll go ahead and turn the key on and populate some of the messages. Of course, mile per hour is not going to show up, but I will be able to pull down the barometric pressure and the temp and RPM once I start the car on, and you can see I'm pulling some data off the bus. The temp, I just took the car for a run down the road, so that's why I'm up around 190. I'll go ahead and start the car up real quick and let you see the RPM come online. Car settles down, you notice the RPM, it's going to bounce between 900 and 1,000, maybe 880, somewhere around there. And you may see the temps climb like a degree or two while it's sitting here idling. Right, so enough of that. Right, so this is the 4-up gauge display. I also went ahead and I programmed in a 2-up gauge display. So let's say you only want to see the RPM and the mile per hour. And now I've got just a 2-up there on the screen. And they all function and behave just like the 4-up. It just centers the information in the panel. You see I got the barometer and the temperature. And again, I'm hoping to find the voltage. If I can't find the voltage, what I may do is I may go ahead and use one of the analog pins on my microcontroller to just take an analog reading. Right now I have got a message stored in the microcontroller, so I'll go ahead and upload the setting that's going to make that read out. And now you can see that I'm getting that custom message done there. And of course, if I want to update that custom message, I can just send it some information real quick. So let's say we want to get her done. We just get her done. But of course, for now, I'll go ahead and leave this message in there. So for the shift messaging, what I've got right now is I have it where it kicks on at a predetermined RPM. My car redlines around 6,900, 7,000 RPM before it hits the rev limiter, and it is so loud in here that once you get that high in the RPM range, you really cannot hear the difference and shift based on sound. So it's going to be real beneficial for me. So let me go ahead and get these gauges reconfigured, and I will give you a peek at how the shift light works, and then I'll take it out on the road and show you kind of how some of the gauges and all work too. You have the ability to put all the digital gauge readouts in any position on the screen that you want. So there's 6 total positions. You have the flexibility to put the gauge readouts in any of those 6 positions, and you can put them in multiple positions if you like. The only caveat is that you can't put the center digital readouts with the Ford digital readout. They're kind of one or the other. For this one, we're going to do RPM and speed underneath it on the left, and then we'll do temperature and then the barometric pressure over on the right. And I'm going to set the shift RPM down to 2,400 RPM. And what that'll let me do is it'll let me just kind of goose the gas here in the driveway, and you'll see how the shift messaging works. You can see some of the issues with me stepping on the Ford can occasionally, like that RPM disappeared and then popped back in. That is going to be difficult to remove. I'll explain in a minute, but it does happen. So anyway, I want to show you how the shift message works. So if I take my car up to 2,500 RPM, you see that I get the good shift light, and then when it drops back, it of course kicks out. We'll do that again. So your shift light will work the same way as the message that you see there. So a couple things you've probably seen. The DVD message does still pop up occasionally, and every now and then the message screen will kind of blank out right there by RPM. That has to do with the way Ford implemented the medium speed can. It's going to be almost impossible to prevent that little bit of messaging interference without splitting the can out entirely. Unfortunately, for guys that still have their stock radio, that means that this utility is not going to be real useful for you unless you're trying to drive a third-party or additional piece of equipment. I did test this on a factory radio, and Ford sends so much data constantly out of that radio head unit to this this front display module that it actually locks the bus up. And when it locks the bus up, you lose steering wheel, door locks, windows. It locks out that entire bus. I'll take and I'll separate the wiring from the medium speed can, and I'll have to get 2 CAN bus controllers on my board. One of them will need to monitor the medium speed CAN bus side in the car, and the other will need to pass through any messages that I want to show on the FDIM on the other side. I don't know if I'm going to implement that, just because for my use it's not real important. I believe I'm going to have the features I'm looking for. Maybe down the road, or if there's enough interest, I may take a look at doing something like that. And when that happens, then of course it will be useful for guys with Ford stock radios. Let's go take this thing out on the road, give you a view of what it looks like when it's driving, how the RPM mile per hour comes across, and of course how the shift light works. I'll have to get it out on the highway and get that little demo set up. If you have any questions, you can always comment on any of the threads I may post in the forum, and then of course you can comment here on my YouTube video. If you have any other implementation maybe you're looking at, like I say, this little CAN controller, this is only one thing it can do. I did build it where it's pretty generic, so if you want to go do some CAN bus work with it, you can do this you can use it on motorcycles or other cars. Let me know your questions, guys, and take care. also trigger